Hello fellow gardeners, welcome back to the Humus Heritage. If you've been watching our channel, you know we're passionate about building gardens that work with nature, not against it. Today, I want to share something that has genuinely transformed how we approach garden maintenance. A simple, yet profound shift in thinking about what goes in those often neglected edges of our growing spaces. Are you tired of your garden edges crumbling, battling endless weeds, and constantly needing replanting? Imagine a solution that not only makes your garden more resilient but also healthier, more beautiful, and dramatically less work. That's what I'm here to show you today. Discover how a simple plant, clover, can transform your garden edges into a thriving, low-maintenance haven, solving all those common gardening frustrations in ways you might not have expected. The edges of our gardens are often forgotten children. They're the first place where erosion takes hold, where weeds seem to thrive most aggressively, and where the soil dries out faster than anywhere else in the bed. We spend countless weekends pulling weeds from these border zones, recompacting soil that keeps washing away, and watching plants struggle against the harsh conditions that naturally exist at garden peripheries. Traditional solutions have their limits. Conventional mulch, whether wood chips or straw, sits on top of the soil, providing temporary relief but gradually breaking down, matting, and harboring problems. Landscape fabric creates barriers that eventually tear and require replacement. Hardscaping and rigid borders contain the problem but don't solve the underlying issue. The soil itself remains weak, depleted, and susceptible to erosion. Year after year, we're managing symptoms rather than addressing the root cause. What if I told you there's a living, dynamic solution that actually gets stronger with time, costs remarkably little to establish, and requires far less maintenance? That unsung hero is clover, and it changes everything about how we think about garden edge resilience. Most of us know clover as a lawn plant, something that appears unbidden in our grass and that we might even try to eradicate. But when you shift your perspective and understand what clover actually does in soil ecology, you realize we've been overlooking one of nature's most elegant solutions for edge management. Let's start with nitrogen cycling, which is perhaps clover's most transformative contribution to your garden. Clover is a legume, which means it has a remarkable partnership with soil bacteria that live in nodules on its roots. These bacteria capture nitrogen from the air, literally from the atmosphere above your garden, and convert it into a form that plants can use. As the clover grows and eventually decays, that nitrogen enriches the soil in ways that conventional fertilizers simply cannot replicate. Your garden edges don't just get covered, they get fed. This natural, slow-release fertilization means nearby plants thrive more robustly, requiring less supplemental feeding and growing with greater vigor than they would in depleted edge soil. Beyond nutrition lies another critical benefit: erosion control and soil stabilization. Garden edges are vulnerable to washing away, especially during heavy rains or on sloping terrain. Clover develops a dense, fibrous root system that works like an underground net, binding soil particles together and anchoring the entire structure. That thick mat of roots prevents the kind of slumping and displacement that plagued traditional edges. Where you once saw bare patches and compacted zones, the clover creates a stable foundation that actually improves with age as the root network becomes more established. Water retention is another game changer, particularly as we face increasingly variable weather patterns. The clover's dense growth, sometimes reaching up to 8 inches but typically staying low, creates a blanket effect over the soil surface. This reduces evaporation dramatically, keeping moisture available to adjacent plants even during dry spells. Rather than water draining away from vulnerable edges, clover acts as a moisture conservator, creating more stable growing conditions season after season. Choosing the right clover variety matters more than you might think. White Dutch clover and its smaller cultivar, microclover, are your primary allies for garden edges. White Dutch clover grows taller and more robust, ideal if you're looking for a more traditional appearance and want a good nectar source for pollinators. Microclover, as its name suggests, stays remarkably low, perfect if you want something that feels almost invisible as an edging treatment while still delivering all the soil benefits. The timing of establishment is important. Early spring offers the advantage of cool weather and natural spring moisture that seeds need for germination. If you're in a warmer climate, late summer or early fall works equally well, allowing the clover to establish before winter dormancy. The key is choosing a time when you'll naturally have adequate moisture without needing constant supplemental watering. Preparation is straightforward but matters. Clear your edge area of existing weeds and debris. You want the clover seeds making contact with bare soil, not competing with established plants for germination. Loosen the soil gently with a rake or light digging. Clover's strong roots will continue this aeration process long after establishment. If you can test your soil pH, aim for the 6.0 to 7.0 range, where clover thrives most readily. Sowing is simple. Use a broadcast method, scattering seed evenly by hand or with a spreader at a rate of 1 to 2 pounds per 1,000 square feet. Here's a pro tip. Mix your tiny clover seeds with sand or a bit of soil before spreading. This not only helps you see where you've sown, but ensures more even distribution. Lightly rake the seeds into the top quarter-inch of soil for good seed-to-soil contact, then water immediately, and keep the area consistently moist for the first 2 weeks while germination happens. Once established, clover becomes remarkably drought-tolerant, requiring minimal supplemental watering in most climates. Maintenance with clover is refreshingly minimal compared to traditional edge management. White clover varieties stay naturally low, typically 4 to 8 inches, and rarely need cutting. When you do mow, just wait until it reaches about 6 inches. This occasional trimming encourages lateral growth and a denser mat. Plus, it removes spent flowers that can create an untidy appearance. Some gardeners never mow their clover edges, and find them perfectly fine. It's really based on your aesthetic preferences. Physical edging becomes important primarily because clover spreads vigorously via stolons, those creeping stems that root as they travel. Periodic trimming with a string trimmer or maintaining a clear physical edge prevents clover from creeping into adjacent beds where you might not want it. This is less maintenance than fighting weeds in those same edges and far less than replanting constantly. Fertilizing is where clover truly shines economically. Additional nitrogen fertilizer is essentially unnecessary because the plant is already fixing its own nitrogen from the air. Those nearby plants, your vegetables, flowers, or ornamentals, get that nitrogen benefit without you adding anything. Overseeding every 2 to 3 years in spring helps maintain a dense, uniform appearance, but even this is optional if you're satisfied with what you have. The pest and disease resistance that develops is remarkable. A healthy clover edge creates an ecosystem that discourages many common garden pests and diseases. The pollinator activity it generates, those white flowers attract bees, butterflies, and beneficial insects, creates a virtuous cycle where predatory insects help control problematic populations. Your garden edge doesn't just look better, it functions as a more complete, resilient ecosystem. The transformation that clover brings to garden edges is profound. You're not just solving immediate problems, erosion, weeds, dry soil, you're addressing them in a way that improves year after year. The soil gets richer, the ecosystem gets healthier, and your maintenance workload shrinks substantially. What starts as a simple edging strategy becomes a cornerstone of garden resilience. I genuinely encourage you to try this. Establish a clover edge in one section of your garden this spring, document the transformation, and let it teach you what's possible. Your edges will thank you, your soil will thrive, and your future gardening self will appreciate the reduced maintenance. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to the Humus Heritage. We're constantly exploring ways to build gardens that work smarter, not harder. Share this video with a fellow gardener who could use this transformation. And keep an eye out for our next episode where we're exploring advanced living mulch techniques specifically designed for raised beds. Your garden edges are waiting for this change. Let's build something resilient together.